what a fantastic intro. I know you guys are expecting to see Ron Miller after that great intro. We'll get to him in a minute for sure, because this is his show. But hi, I'm Brent Leary. I'm a co-founder and co-partner, I don't know, for PPN, which is the Players Productions Network. And I am half of the CRM Players Duo, which also features the venerable Paul Greenberg. And we are extremely excited to have this new show, which is called PPN, FastForward on PPN, of course. And that's all because we are huge fans of Ron Miller. Even though he is a huge fan of a lot of Boston sports teams, we still love Ron and respect Ron. We've known, both of us, Paul and I can speak for him. We've known him for at least 15 years, well before he was doing his thing at TechCrunch, but especially got to know him while he was at TechCrunch because we used to go to a lot of events together, and I would end up sitting right next to Ron, who is a fabulous enterprise technology reporter. And within about 5 minutes of sitting down and getting into the keynote, he would ask me if I had a comment on something he heard. I said, I think this. And then next thing you know, I'm getting a notification on my iPhone saying there's a new article, and I was referenced in it. And it was from Ron Miller. I always sat in amazement saying, how am I sitting next to him, hearing everything he's hearing, and he's got an article after 5 minutes, and I'm just sitting there looking stupid. So we go back a long ways. We respect everything he's done. And so this is his show. So this will probably be the only time I'll do this. I'm going to introduce the one and only Ron Miller to his own show. Ron, thank you for joining us.
That was a great intro. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much to you and Paul for, having the faith in me to have my own podcast here on PPN. I'm really looking forward to it. And it's really when I started FastForward, a year ago, December, had this vision of having a podcast, but, trying to launch blog and a newsletter and making all that happen, you can only do so much at a time. And, for me, especially now, since I've taken this independence since January, to be involved with you guys, first of all, is always fun, always a pleasure. But to be, to have you guys and your vast experience putting on these kinds of broadcasts and, involved in the whole production aspect of it. I don't have to think about that. I don't have to worry about learning that. And there's just so many things you have to learn as a solo publisher that this was for me, like this just makes it easier for me, but it's also fun because I get to come on your network and be involved with you guys in a more direct way.
We're really excited about it. So this is like the pilot. So you get to see all the kind of the messy beginnings and things that we hope work, but maybe they don't. And then
I just want to say that intro was very cool. That looked amazing. I was very impressed that that's my show.
I'm glad we started a show just to hear the intro, man. I can't wait for the outro.
We can stop now.
Right. No, but I did want to put this up because there is a little QR code in the bottom, right? Ron, you want to tell them what that's for?
Yeah, so I would love people who are watching the show, if you're not subscribers, to subscribe to my weekly newsletter. That would be, part of the idea of a podcast, a newsletter, and a blog is that, you have this content flywheel. Eventually, I'll have people after this episode. It won't be me and Brian. It'll be me and other guests like you typically get on a podcast, and my hope is that we'll have this like kind of content flywheel. I'll get information from the podcast, which I can then do social cuts of and publish on LinkedIn. And then I can take, that material, maybe make a profile out of it, and then maybe take some quotes from that and make an article out of it. So you start to have this content engine going, and, that would be great. And a big part of that is the newsletter, and that QR code gets you to the subscription.
By the way, John Reed is saying he's already subscribed, but he'll subscribe again. And okay, yeah. I just love Boston sports talk. Yeah.
You must be really happy about how the Red Sox are doing then, because they're just doing terrible.
It doesn't sound like they got off to the best start. So
No. It's been a very, very rough month and very hard product to watch.
Well,
that's all I'll say.
It's
I can just go down that rabbit hole and talk about the Red Sox all day, and we don't want to do that. That's not
we really don't want to do that. But anyway, so talk a little bit about why now is the time for you to venture out into the podcast world. I mean, you've been one of the best enterprise tech reporters. You write some of the greatest content in terms of not the fluff, but the real meat, and really get right to the heart of a lot of things. And you've been doing that forever. So why now did you want to get into the visual and the audio aspects of content creation?
Yeah, I mean, before I say that, that intro that you did, where I remember that it was an Adobe event, where you were sitting next to me, and I asked you for a quote, and you sent it over to me, and then I published it like 10 minutes later. But I don't do so much of that anymore with FastForward. It's more of a thoughtful approach than a kind of daily journalism grind that I was in before. Although I did a mix, But for this, when I launched FastForward, I wanted to speak to, the big decision makers at big companies that are driving, enterprise technology. And I've done that. I've published like 60 profiles now since I launched, back with Bold Start. And since I left as well, I've kept that kind of tradition going of publishing these profiles. We're going to talk about HumanX. I was at HumanX last week, and I interviewed a bunch of people, and one of them was Jennifer Tejada, who's the CEO at PagerDuty, and I published a profile of her yesterday. So that's I'm doing that already, but we live in a kind of a visual world and a multimodal world, and I think having something like this, where, like I said, I can either interview the person and then do the article, or I can have them on here and then have an article come out of that. I think it just creates more ways of taking that content, using that content, driving that content, and what they call the content flywheel, getting that rolling, and having. I know John Reed's been doing podcasting since 2007. I'm on here all the time. I'm on, Ray Wang's and Vala Ashar's podcast quite frequently as well, but I've never had my own, and I think, obviously I have a lot to say. I think about this stuff way too much. And I think having some interesting people to shoot it off of in this format will be another dimension that I haven't really explored fully, even though podcasting is obviously not new.
And you also do a lot of things around moderating conversations at events. And I know one of the things that we wanted to talk about, because we're kind of like you said, kind of integrating what you write about in the newsletter, in your blog, maybe even taking a little bit more, adding a little different level of perspective through conversations like this. And so you were at HumanX. First of all, I don't know how many people know a lot about the conference, but maybe you could talk about the conference and what you did, and maybe some of the things you took away from it.
Yeah, so HumanX, it's a fairly new conference. It may be 2 years old, or maybe 3. I'm not sure, but I think last year was the original. They had it in Las Vegas. This year they had it in San Francisco, but I think they're moving back to Vegas next year. There were 6,000 or 7,000 people there, all talking about AI, and I mean, there was a lot of content. You had main stage, you had a couple of side stages, you had the floor, you had round tables, you had, press conferences. There was, just a lot of smart people walking around. And, it was, for someone like me, it was like, it was like a carnival of enterprise tech. And especially about AI, since, enterprise tech is obviously more than AI, but, you can't talk about one without the other anymore. And, to go to an event like this where there's so many people from the industry that are people that I want to see, I want to talk to, I want to hear. That was big for me. And they invited me last year. I did a couple of panels then, and I came back this year, and also did a couple of panels. One was on enterprise AI readiness, which is pretty timely, I think. The other was really interesting. It was on unstructured data, and speaking of multimodal, video, audio, images, those types of things, because of how big the files are, because of how much information is associated with these files, because of the format that they're in, and the way that they kind of exist, not in a neat little table and a database. It's much more challenging to kind of get that information into a large language model. And there's so much of it, right? I mean, when you think about, it's not a supply problem, because if you look at like YouTube and Flickr and Instagram, and there's just so many things out there with video and audio, and the model makers have pretty much exhausted the text part of the internet. they got all Facebook and Reddit and everything else, giving us weird little answers. But the world is multimodal, and so that was an interesting one. But I spoke to a bunch of people. Like I said, I spoke to, including Jennifer Todd. I spoke to Jay Das from Sapphire Adventures, and Arun Chandra, who's from Nice, and also Sophie Graham, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at IFS, which is a manufacturing software platform. So it was really interesting to get her perspective as a manufacturing software maker, to be the Chief Sustainability Officer, and you're talking about AI. It was a very interesting conversation, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So there was just a lot for me to take in. And if you want to talk about some of the things that I saw and what I wrote about, we can move to that.
Yeah, let's do that. I know one of the things you kind of came in, I guess there was a lot of hype around the AI, but how much reality went along with the hype?
So, it was like kind of a tale of two conferences, right? So on the main stage, you had, like the big companies, Amazon, Matt Garman was there, and you had NVIDIA. Jensen was there, but he wasn't there. He was recorded earlier on video, so it wasn't even like a video interview. So it was kind of cheating a little bit on the organizer's part. But we did get to hear from Jensen, and then there was actually in the same kind of opening day sequence was another kind of panel, and another NVIDIA executive was on that. So NVIDIA was well represented, and as they should be. But the message from the big companies that I was hearing was, like, this is like a fait accompli. There's no hard problems to be solved. This is going to change everything. And my everyday reality is somebody who uses these tools on a regular basis, and I write about it a lot on LinkedIn, what I call my adventures in AI, is very different. And so I thought that, I would write about kind of the contrast between what I was hearing, especially from the main stage, where all the big names were, versus, what my experience was and what I heard, in the hallways. When you talk to people get real about it, right? And they're like, yeah, it can do some pretty wild things. Which is not to say that I don't think that it does some things really well, but it doesn't do everything well, and there's a lot of problems, and we have to acknowledge those. And the problem is that if we say it's like really great all the time,
Right.
we're not doing a service to the people who are actually using, because they're going to be like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get it to do it? Why is it doing this to me when it's supposed to just work? And it doesn't just work. And I think that's the thing. And I just want to say, like NVIDIA, especially with two people on stage talking about how this stuff is so great, is kind of interesting to me, because NVIDIA is making huge amount of money from this whole thing. They sell the chips, they fund companies, they give money to startups, all in exchange for them buying more chips. And if they're passing along that same kind of message that the other big companies are, that we should be investing more, we should be doing more, we should be working more, we should be solving more problems, it's kind of self-serving, because it's just driving up the chip usage, which in turn drives up their share price. And it's been on fire like the last 10 days.
I feel a need to actually just admit I do own a few shares of the stock, so just had to put that out there.
You're happy about this hype fest.
But you know what? I watched him on a CNBC. I think it was right after their latest earnings, and he was kind of defending what was enterprise software companies, because their stock prices have just been getting killed. And
Right.
he came on to say, look, I think the financial analysts have it wrong. We don't think agentic is going to replace enterprise SaaS. We think it's going to work hand in hand. And so I think he was doing a little of what you were just saying. Yeah.
It's super interesting to me, and it's really one of the things that I'm thinking about writing this week is, Wall Street's kind of overreaction to everything that happens with AI, and the latest is obviously Mythos, and it's not now it's going to kill every security company. This is ridiculous. It's like kind of like 15 years ago when Facebook would get into whatever, location services, and every company that was in that would be dead. Or Facebook would get into video, and YouTube would be dead. Or, it was just like, every time a big company does something, just because they dip their toe in the water.
Yeah.
And let me say that, one of the things I wrote about in this hype versus reality was bringing up that Mythos release, because by turns it was the doom and the hype all in one thing, right? It was gonna be like the end of software bugs as we know it, and it was gonna exploit bugs at scale. So which is it?
Yeah.
I really don't think that the cybersecurity platforms should be shaking in their boots, but every time Anthropic or OpenAI throws out a press release, but it seems like every time something pops up on the Bloomberg terminal, the investors just bite like a fish on a hook. Oh my God, here's this is going to be the end of this industry.
Yeah.
And it just, I agree with Jensen. It's not going to be the case.
Yeah, I remember when Amazon got into doing shipping, and everybody thought that was going to be into UPS and
Right.
FedEx and the Postal Service. And
the Postal Service, maybe.
They were in trouble well before that. But yeah, I think you're right. Every time Anthropic comes out with something, an industry goes down. All the big players in the industry go down about 8% that day, just from the price.
And you think there would just be a little bit more nuance in the analysis that goes on there, because these are big, important companies. They have years and years of data to play off of. So even if you think that they're going to be disrupted in some way by agents, it's just like, I remember Kate Leggett at IRL, right, saying, like, if you're a company, and it's tax day, so this is an apt thing to bring up, and you're bringing you're tracking like 52 countries tax codes for your enterprise company, because you operate in 52 countries, and you're supposed to keep up with every tax code change. That's SAP's job, or your ERP vendor,
Yeah.
whoever they happen to be. But that's SAP's job, and you don't want to be
No.
responsible for that. And if you are, it's your throat that's going to get choked if you mess up and you get fined.
Yeah.
So that's what you want a vendor for, because that's
Right.
their job, right? And the idea that you can just like, vibe code your way to enterprise software is a little ridiculous to me.
Yeah, it's really about, you said it, the throat to choke. Big
Yeah,
enterprises want to have the
IT
ability
loves
to sue, right? So they're not going to go for the guy vibe coding in his parents' basement.
that.
They're going to go for the enterprise
I
software.
made an ERP.
Yeah. Okay, now I heard you say something. I heard you the agent word brought up.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I know that that's one of those other things you recently covered. And I'm going to bring this back up because you asked a really interesting question. Because everybody, at every conference you go to, agents all the time, but it's kind of, you almost feel like it's just the introduction to things with enterprise agents. But where do you see this going? What are you hearing from the folks that you talk to?
So the impetus for this article was an event that Salesforce put on with Silvio Savarese, who's their chief AI scientist. And it's interesting because people are talking about agents, and there are agents out there, and there are agents doing things, but I don't think we're anywhere near the kind of agent vision of having multiple agents talking to multiple agents, moving across systems freely, and all of that. Mostly, it's agents within systems, or the most successful ones are the coding agents. But even though we're still in the very early stages of prompting agents, they were talking about the next step, which is called what they call ambient agents. And I don't know if they created this concept, but they did bring it to my attention for the first time. And what it is instead of prompting the software to do something, it's it sort of shows up. The agent shows up when you need it. So the example that they gave was a salesperson's on a call, and they're talking, the salesperson and the customer, and you start to see information based on the call and the context that could be helpful for you to pass on to the customer to kind of help close the sale faster. And I thought about that. I'm like thinking, okay, I'm having a conversation with Bran, and like I see this scroll of information in front of me, and I'm supposed to look at it and then keep the flow of conversation going without getting lost. And it seems a little, it's not necessarily realistic, but I think that the concept is quite compelling, that you will have agents that kind of work with you as you move through a work process, and they show up when you need them, rather than you saying, okay, I need to do this, and I want you to do these 5 things, and I want you to do it every Friday morning, or whatever. Instead, it's going to be like, I'm working with Salesforce or SAP or Workday or ServiceNow, or whatever it is, and as I'm working, something recognizes what I'm trying to do, and not in the clippy way, but in a much more intelligent way. I see you're trying to enter a CRM record, but a little bit more smarter than that. That's the idea, that it would come along and help you. And I think from the software vendor perspective, it kind of pushes you back into the interface, right? It pushes you away from a back end agentic process doing something at the API or MCP server level or whatever, and puts it back into a human to agent interaction, and makes we're talking about the SaaS companies and are they relevant, and as much as I believe they are, this would in many ways bring the attention back into the software itself and the front end of the software, where humans are interacting with it, and the agents would be there to assist. So I think it's a pretty interesting vision. Again, we're still very early with prompted agents. We're starting to see some advantages of that, but we're also learning that it's much harder than it sounds from the hype and the marketing. And this is just one. This is another step, and we haven't even got past the first one yet. But it's something definitely to think about. And as I say, I really think from a vendor perspective, it could be very advantageous because it makes them very relevant to the end user again.
Yeah, I tend to think when ChatGPT came out and kind of started the generative AI era, it felt like it came out of nowhere. Now I'm sure there's a group of people who knew what was coming, but the vast majority of us didn't.
That's true.
And then like fast forward to I guess maybe a year and a half ago when we started hearing about agents,
Right.
and it feels like we're getting more potential insight into what's next now with agentic than we did when we first started with generative. So I still don't know if people really know what's going to happen, but it feels like there's more people talking about the potential of what agentic brings than we got when generative first came out, because it really felt like that came out of nowhere.
Well, I mean, I think people are thinking deeply about this stuff. Like I said, I think about it way too often and way more than I should. Um, and like everybody's like I just spent 3 or 4 days at a conference, immersed in it. So it's like there's just a lot to think about. But people like Savarese, who's a data scientist and an AI scientist. I mean, that's his job to kind of be experimenting with this with his team and trying to figure out like how could this go, where could this go, and what are the next steps, even while we're trying to figure out the first steps.
Yeah. Hey, was there anything you felt unsettling about any of the conversations that were going on out there?
I mean, only to the extent, like I said, that I felt like there was an unrealistic, you know, kind of hype around what it can do and what it can't do, and so there wasn't anything that I heard that made me think, oh my God, this industry is going to go away tomorrow because of this. If anything, my natural state is AI cynic, and even though I use it a lot, as a journalist, my state is cynic, and that's my job, is to be cynical. But at the same time, like I'm trying to be realistic, and this is what I said, as my, kind of introducing my panels last week, is that I like to kind of push back against the current narrative. So there was a lot of that, what you're talking about, what you're suggesting. Ray Kurzweil was on stage,
Oh, wow.
and he was talking about his prediction in 1999 that we would have AGI by 2029, and
Wow.
I still don't think we're anywhere near it. And if you watch stuff that David Linthicum does, who's a cloud guy who does a lot of really interesting stuff. He's got a YouTube channel, really compelling narratives that he puts out there. And one of the things he was talking about the other day was like, we're not anywhere near AGI, and we're probably not going to get there for a long time. And that's my feelings. I like David because we agree a lot. But that's not totally true. I mean, we agree a lot, but I like him anyway. But the thing is that to get to where we are now is like so far from how we as humans think, and I think that's the real story. But Kurzweil was kind of defending his
Prediction. Yeah.
saying that, well, it could happen, and then he said, well, nobody really knows how to define it, so some people will call it that. Whether
That's
like,
that
okay,
was
well,
my
some people will, yeah, I'm sure they
that was
will.
my exact thought is everybody's definition for this is going to be different. So
Right.
yeah, which is, I guess that's just kind of like you said, sort of natural state. I mean, I can ask people in CRM what their definition is. I can ask 10 people. I'll get 11 answers back. They're all different. But yeah, so well, yeah, I would say, he made that prediction 27 years ago.
Right. So I mean, it's pretty good how
Yeah,
far we did get in that
yeah.
time, much further than I think most people would have thought. But I'm not, I mean, as brilliant as this man is, and I'm not trying to pretend that I have anywhere near the depth of knowledge or, the intellect that that man has. But, based on my own observations as a humble scribe, I don't see
Yeah,
it.
that's it, that is I guess that's why they call them futurists, right? They see things that we
You
just
can
don't.
go out there on a limb and nobody's going to question it.
All right, so I got one last thing for you.
Okay.
And you did mention adventures in AI.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be interesting to bring up Ron's adventures in AI. And I saw this little small portion from an overall adventure you mentioned. I'll just read this, and then I'll ask you to explain. So you said at the very bottom of this one adventure, I could picture Claude slapping its virtual forehead as it's reported it could actually do that and proceeded to do it. I like this part. Man, oh man. What is this about?
So I was asking Claude to take a document and display it for me, which is something that it's done many times. And it said, no, I can't do that. And I said, well, actually you can. All you have to do is convert it to a PDF and show it in the artifact window. And now I know the parts of the Claude interface now because I actually took one of the free courses and it was useful in that it kind of gave me the lay of the land in a way that I didn't understand before. I tended to use just the chatbot piece. And so I learned other parts of the interface that I didn't know about. So I could even communicate with the bot and tell it stuff about itself that it obviously didn't know. Which again, this is like how far it is from human intelligence. It's like if you and I were doing something, even if we were like just starting out in our career and we said, okay, you know, you know, Brent, you're my intern. I need you to take this document, turn it into PDF and, send it to me. And if you didn't know how to do it, I'd show you how to do it. And you pretty much know how to do it. Right. And it's like, okay, you know how to do this. What are you telling me you don't know how to do it? So I had to explain to the model or to the bot how to use its own tools. And it's like, oh yeah, I can do that. Let me do that for you.
I just thought that's good. I really love your adventures pieces you do on LinkedIn. It kind of a nice little addition to the fast forward, content creation lab you're putting together. So that I really enjoy that.
That's definitely part of it.
So we come to the end of this pilot, and I'm going to pop this up once again because I think it's important for folks to realize this is a pilot. Where this is a show. I think we're going to start off like kind of taking baby steps monthly. I think we're aiming at the third Wednesday of the month. And Ron, why don't you go again and kind of state how you see this kind of coming together and what you really your vision for this?
So, I mean, we could do an adventures in AI section, every show. And that seems to be a fun one. Maybe we could start off the show with the adventure in AI and then launch into the guest. So my plan is to have guests every month. It's not going to be just me talking. I prefer to get back into the position where I'm asking the questions and letting the other person talk, which is easier. But yeah, when I announced, at IRL, we announced that we were going to do this, and I put it on LinkedIn, and I had people inbounding to me right away that they were interested in having their folks come on. And I talked to some people at Human X last week and said, would you want to come on? And they were like, yeah. So, hopefully we'll get that ball rolling in the same way we got, the blog rolling and the profiles, and we'll get, the more people we get on, the more people will want to get on. So the idea will be, to get people who are, thought leaders, decision makers, people who are immersed in all this stuff. And again, a lot of it's going to be about AI. Some of it will be about the human side of it. Some of it will be about like how you're implementing it, from a team perspective or an organizational perspective, how you get past all of these like pesky ROI questions, but other things too. Like if it's this week or next week is Google Cloud Next, when there are major events like that, we can hopefully get somebody to talk about those. So the idea will be to stay current, but to dig deep and talk to people who know about the stuff, and hopefully help me and the audience learn together.
We already got somebody coming in with a suggestion, that someone being my buddy Alan Birch. So he's getting that because we do Stump the Godfather on.
I know.
I actually kind of like the Stump the Journalist.
We'll have Paul come on and ask the question to
me. Well, I'd just like to say, on behalf of, I like to call him the Venerable Paul Greenberg, we're really excited about having you be a part of we call it the PPN universe. I keep on trying to get rid of this. There it is. Our PPN universe. And because we really, we are willing to overlook the whole Boston sports stuff because we just really like you and we respect all that you do. And we're looking forward to having that be a part of what we're trying to do. So this has been a great start.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to keeping it going and seeing where this goes.
All right, so I guess it's time for the outro. Let's see if the outro is as good as the intro. How about that, Ron? Because that intro is kind of really good. So we'll let you know. I think, like I said, it should be the third Wednesday of every month. I don't know what the specific day is for May, but we'll be posting stuff. We'll let you know. And I don't know. Hey, Ron might actually have a guest that has volunteered to join FastForward on.
I hope to. I'm gonna start to put out those kind of calls. And if anybody listening out there, it wants to be on the show or knows people who wants to be, you know how to get in touch with us.
Awesome. So with all that said, this has been the inaugural FastForward on PPN, and we will see you next time.
How cool is that? Thank you.
As cool as this.